The movie opens in Berlin, during World War II. We meet an 8-year-old boy named Bruno, running through the streets playing with his friends. It's an idyllic and carefree moment, but it contrasts sharply with what's about to happen. When Bruno gets home, his family's large house is busy with servants and soldiers. Bruno's father, Ralph, is a Nazi officer who has just been promoted. He wears his uniform as he hosts a gathering with other Nazi officers, and everyone is congratulating him. After the party, Bruno notices the adults talking seriously. He senses something is going on but doesn't fully understand. Soon after, his mother, Elsa, tells him and his sister Gretel that they have to move away from Berlin because of their father's new job. Bruno is upset by the news. He doesn't want to leave his friends or his grandparents, and he doesn't understand why they can't stay. The next day, they pack up and travel to their new home in the countryside. When they arrive, Bruno is immediately disappointed. The house is isolated and surrounded by soldiers. There are no other children around to play with. The only company he has is his sister, but she's older and already beginning to adopt the ideology of the Nazi regime, swooning over soldiers and parroting what she's been taught. Bruno looks out of his bedroom window and notices something strange in the distance, a large fence enclosing what looks like a camp. Behind the fence, he sees people dressed in identical striped uniforms, working and moving around. At first, he thinks it might be a farm. He asks his mother about it, but she seems uneasy and quickly changes the subject, not explaining anything to him. Bruno begins to feel lonely and bored in the new house. He misses his old life and wants to explore beyond the garden, but his mother forbids him from going too far, warning that it's dangerous. Despite her warning, Bruno's curiosity about the camp and the people in the striped pajamas grows stronger. The next day, Bruno notices Lieutenant Kotler outside, washing his father's car. Bruno approaches him and complains that he's bored and has nothing to do around here. Gretel lingers nearby, clearly infatuated with Kotler, giggling and trying to catch his attention. Kotler dismisses Bruno's complaint with irritation but then calls over Pavel, a frail, quiet man in a striped uniform who works as a servant in the house and garden, and orders him to build a swing for Bruno in the yard to keep him busy. Pavel obediently puts up a simple swing from a tree branch and Bruno swings. But while playing on it, Bruno loses his grip, falls to the ground, and scrapes his knee badly. Pavel rushes over to help, kneeling down with visible worry on his face. He knows that being near Bruno without permission, or even touching him, could get him into serious trouble. Still, he gently cleans the wound and wraps a bandage around Bruno's knee. Later, Elsa returns home and sees Bruno's injury. When she learns from Bruno that it was Pavel who cleaned and bandaged him, she freezes, visibly unsettled, but quietly thanks Pavel for helping and tells Bruno to go to his room. Her polite words mask a deep discomfort. She knows how dangerous it is for Pavel to be noticed at all, let alone touch one of her children. The next day, Bruno's and Gretel's tutor arrives at the house to give them lessons in German history and ideology. He assigns them a book to study that emphasizes German nationalism and anti-Jewish propaganda. Bruno sits down to read it dutifully but quickly becomes distracted by his growing curiosity about the strange camp he saw from his window. Later, he sneaks to the back of the property, climbs out through the shelter window, and slips away into the forest. He follows the path to the barbed wire fence and finally comes across a boy about his age sitting alone on the other side. The boy introduces himself as Shemuel. Bruno, still clueless about the reality of the camp, asks Shemuel if he has friends to play with there. Shemuel admits that there are other kids but they mostly fight, and he prefers to stay by himself. Bruno innocently complains that it seems unfair Shemuel has the option of friends while he himself is stuck at home with no one to play with, not realizing the horror of Shemuel's situation. Shemuel starts to explain but is interrupted when the camp's loudspeakers sound and soldiers bark orders at the prisoners. Shemuel jumps up and scurries back inside the camp. The next day, Bruno explores the basement of his house and finds an old football. Excited, he heads back to the fence, hoping to play with Shemuel, but the boy doesn't appear. Eventually, Shemuel does show up again. This time Bruno notices Shemuel's clothing and asks why everyone in the camp wears pajamas all day. Shemuel gently explains that they aren't pajamas, they're prison uniforms, and that all their real clothes were taken when they arrived. Bruno, still struggling to understand, invites Shemuel to come over and have dinner with his family sometime. But Shemuel shakes his head and tells him it's impossible because of the fence. When Bruno presses further, asking why he's locked up at all, Shemuel quietly tells him that it's because he's Jewish. This makes Bruno uncomfortable. He's heard his father, his teacher, and the other adults describe Jews as evil people, and now he doesn't know what to believe. He leaves the fence conflicted. That evening, while sitting with his family in his father's office, Bruno finally asks about the horrible smell coming from the camp's chimneys. Ralph stiffens but calmly tells him they're just burning rubbish, a lie to hide the truth. The next day, during another lesson, the tutor continues to hammer in the idea that Jews are enemies of Germany who will overthrow and kill German families if given the chance. Bruno protests, saying not all Jews are evil. The tutor angrily dismisses Bruno's opinion and insists he believe what is in the book. The next day, Bruno sneaks into the kitchen, steals some cookies, and hides them in his bag. He runs outside and makes his way through the woods to the camp. When he gets to the fence, he hands the cookies to Shemuel, who devours them hungrily, showing how starved he really is. Bruno picks up a ball and playfully throws it at Shemuel, but Shemuel catches it and gives it back, warning him not to throw it again because it could get him into trouble. Suddenly, the alarm blares through the camp, and Shemuel quickly scurries away, leaving Bruno alone at the fence again. Later that day, Elsa comes home from town and immediately notices the horrible smell in the air. She asks Kotler about it, and Kotler bluntly remarks that the Jews smell worse when they burn. Elsa freezes, horrified at what she's just heard. She demands an explanation from Ralph, asking what really happens in the camp. Ralph stiffens and tells her he took an oath never to reveal the details of what happens in the concentration camps. But Elsa is furious, deeply unsettled that her husband could take part in such horrors. Ralph insists that he is a Nazi officer and that everything he does is for the good of Germany. Their argument is cut short when Bruno enters to tell them his grandfather has arrived. That evening, the family sits down to dinner. Grandfather asks the children about their schooling. Bruno admits he finds it boring because all they ever study is German history, while he prefers adventure stories. Grandfather scolds him, insisting that history is very important and that he should pay more attention to it. During dinner, the tension between Ralph and Kotler simmers. Ralph is angry that Kotler spoke so openly to Elsa about the camp's true purpose. When Pavel accidentally spills wine while serving, Kotler grabs him and drags him out of the room to beat him, leaving the rest of the family uncomfortable. Ralph does nothing, watching coldly as if it's normal. That night, Bruno lies awake, heartbroken about what happened to Pavel, but Gretel tries to reassure him, claiming the Jews deserved it because they caused Germany to lose the war. The next morning, at breakfast, Elsa's eyes are red from crying. Later, while soldiers move furniture in the house, Bruno notices Shemuel cleaning glasses inside the house. Surprised to see him, Bruno tells him they're not supposed to be friends, as he's been told Jews are enemies. Shemuel says nothing, till Bruno offers him more cookies, which Shemuel quickly eats, still painfully hungry. At that moment, Kotler enters and accuses Shemuel of stealing the cookies. Out of fear, Bruno lies, saying he didn't give them to him. Kotler orders Shemuel to keep working and promises to punish him later. Feeling guilty, Bruno returns to the fence to find Shemuel, but day after day, Shemuel doesn't appear. Each day Bruno goes back, but the spot remains empty. Finally, one day, Shemuel shows up again, his face bruised and beaten. Bruno apologizes for betraying him, and despite everything, Shemuel forgives him. Soon after, the family gets a call. Bruno's grandmother has passed away after a long illness. The next day, they travel back to Munich for her funeral. When they return, Bruno goes to visit Shemuel again. They play a game of checkers, laughing and enjoying each other's company as Shemuel shows Bruno where to move his pieces. That evening, Bruno's parents continue arguing, their voices loud enough to keep the children awake. The next day, Ralph asks his children if they're happy in the new house. Bruno says he is, as he doesn't want to move again because he finally has a friend. Ralph tells them that their mother is unhappy here and wants to leave, which is why he's asking. Gretel agrees that they should leave, but Bruno still protests. Ralph explains that the house isn't suitable for children and that they'll move soon. When Bruno visits Shemuel again, he's upset and tells him that his father has decided they'll leave. Shemuel tells Bruno that his own father has disappeared and no one knows where he went. As Bruno idly digs at the ground, he suggests that maybe Shemuel could escape, but first they should find his father. Shemuel explains that if Bruno wants to come into the camp, he'll need to wear a uniform and shave his head. Bruno resists at first, but their conversation is interrupted when the camp alarm goes off again, forcing Shemuel to run back. The next morning, Bruno packs a big sandwich, hides it under his clothes, grabs a shovel, and sneaks out of the house. He rushes to the camp, where Shemuel is waiting. Bruno changes into a striped uniform and uses the shovel to dig a hole under the fence. He crawls through while Shemuel crawls out to help him, and then they head into the camp together, determined to find Shemuel's father. Meanwhile, back at the house, Elsa realizes Bruno is missing and frantically searches for him, growing more and more panicked when she can't find him anywhere. In the camp, Bruno grows more and more uneasy as he walks among the prisoners, but he keeps moving with Shemuel, trying to help find his father. They enter a crowded shed, where even more prisoners are packed together. Suddenly, soldiers arrive, shouting at everyone and herding them out. Bruno and Shemuel are swept up with the others. The two boys are forced into a group that is marched toward a large building. They're pushed inside in order to take off their clothes. Meanwhile, Elsa finds Bruno's sandwich in their backyard shed, and realizes he went into the woods. Panicked, she calls for Ralph, who rushes out with soldiers and search dogs to look for his son. Inside the chamber, the boys huddle together as the soldiers seal the door and release the gas. Ralph and his men finally reach the camp and discover Bruno's clothes lying neatly by the fence, just as the chamber fills with gas and the prisoners, including Bruno and Shemuel, are killed. When Ralph realizes what has happened, his face crumbles in horror. Elsa collapses to the ground, wailing in grief as she understands that her son has been killed in the very camp her husband helped to run. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe for more notifications. Until next time. See you soon.